Welcome to the Silvan Australia Podcast, where we talk everything rural lifestyle. Welcome to another episode of the Silvan Australia Podcast. On this episode, we have with us Gary Northover, Executive Director from the Tractor and Machinery Association. Welcome to the podcast, Gary.
Yes, my pleasure, Nick.
Gary, tell us, with our podcast, before we get started, we normally just touch base on yourself and on the guest and how you got involved in what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first got involved in the TMA.
Okay, well, I've been with the TMA a little over 3 years now. I had a background with the Caterpillar dealer most recently, for about 15 years looking after their equipment rental business. And prior to that, in the Brambles Group, so mainly a construction background, but within William Adams as a cat dealer, we did have an ag presence, so I was quite familiar with the industry, and I guess through contacts there, the TMA role came up after I sort of finished full-time work and started my own management consultancy, so this slots in nicely with the bit of work that I do in the consultancy space as well.
Okay, oh, that's great. Can you tell us a little bit about the Tractor and Machinery Association and what's its actual function there?
Sure. So the TMA has been in operation for at least 70-odd years now and was originally established to represent the interests of the major manufacturers, and that's still the case. They're the cornerstone members of the TMA, I guess, your typical names, John Deere, Casey Holland, Kubota and the like, but in recent times we've sought to expand our reach to include local manufacturers and dealers to the industry, but also affiliate members, so suppliers and others that have a role in the industry. So our membership is much broader based than perhaps what it originally was. Mm-hmm. And we've got a couple of key functions. One of the things we've done at the TMA is try and be very clear on what it is we do and what we don't do. So we've got three main pillars to our business. One of those is, the first of those is around the area of sales stats. So we record and report to the industry and to the market sales figures for the industry, and we think that's a pretty important function of the association. The second of those is our role in an advocacy position for safety and industry-related matters. So we work with the roads authorities and the WorkSafe authorities on matters that have a relevance to our industry. Some examples of that include we've recently been working with the VFF in Victoria and then the National National Heavy Vehicle Regulator on developing a new set of road rules for movement of oversized ag equipment. So it's been a pretty key function of ours.
Yep.
And the third of those is just in the area of promoting of the industry generally. So one of the things we do there is we're heavily involved in helping the development of the curriculum for ag apprentices, and even things like our annual conference, which we only just held this week, as a bit of a networking and development opportunity for the industry. So they're the things we do, and they keep us pretty busy.
Well, you just mentioned the TMA conference in Melbourne. That had a focus on better understanding the customer of tomorrow. Can you elaborate on that, Gary?
Yes, certainly. So, I think it's no surprise to any industry, any business out there today that the changing needs of the customer mean that we've really got to sharpen our focus on where that's heading and what we need to do about it. So it's not just from the technology adoption, but this whole concept of we're no longer transactional people. We need to be thinking about lifetime relationships with customers and being seen as a trusted advisor. So we thought that was a great opportunity just to showcase a few topics that might help the industry to just think a bit more about that as a way forward for their businesses and how better to deal with their customers.
No, certainly, Gary. That sounds very interesting. Let's just go over a few figures, I guess. That I know you mentioned earlier that the TMA provide industry figures. So we'll quickly touch base on some of those. We saw a slight decline this year of about 12.5%. That was up to June, that is, in tractor sales, with the
Yep.
exception of WA and Tasmania, I think, as well. But given the climatic events across Australia, I mean, it is a drop in sales, but it must be of some relief that it didn't get hit harder than that.
No doubt about that. I think we were all predicting that the drought would have widespread repercussions throughout the whole industry, and those central New South Wales, southern Queensland, northern Victorian regions in particular have been hit hard. However, the rest of the market has probably shown some reasonable resilience, and no doubt that dealers have been well stocked and able to do pretty sharp deals to keep, sales moving. We saw a bit of a bounce in confidence just in the second half of June, as a result of perhaps the election getting out of the way and interest rates being reduced, and maybe there was a few people out there that their accountant said you better go spend some money before the end of the tax year. So that contributed to a bit of a bounce in June.
Mm-hmm.
So we just need to watch that further for the next quarter just to determine whether that's an ongoing sort of state of health or whether, in fact, we still might be challenged.
Yeah. In the recent Ag Review report that just came out, there's data that, the sub 60 horsepower market, 60 horsepower and tractor that is, still holds 35% of the market. I mean, in your mind, what can those manufacturers do to incentivise the hobby and leisure markets, given that those tractors have lower hours and lower turnover, I guess, than their higher horsepower counterparts?
Yes, there is two distinct. It's not just the fact that it's segmented by size, but I think it'd be fair to say that the higher end of the market's being held up by larger farmers who perhaps operate their equipment on planned fleet management lines. So if machines are due for renewal at a certain period, they tend to renew those, and at that time, and that keeps that end of the market going. The sub 60 horsepower market's a different beast. It's certainly, as you say, that hobby farmer leisure market. People, and perhaps even down into the dairy space, people are buying and holding, not so much on a fleet management basis, but more for the needs of their operation at the time. And I think there's no doubt that we're seeing many of the key manufacturers continue to provide good cost-effective solutions. They don't need all the bells and whistles that some of the big equipment needs with some of the technology that's coming through there. And I think they're certainly mindful that market, there are a range of price points, if you like, that are going to be suited. And you'll see more of that sort of tailoring, if you like, from manufacturers to suit those various price points.
Sure, no, definitely. Gary, here's a bit of a loaded question, if I may. The manufacturing and assembly of tractors in Australia ceased some time ago. In your mind, what can the Australian government that is, do to incentivise even one of the big five to bring back assembly of even a sub 60 horsepower tractor back to Australian shores?
Yeah, look, I wish I had an answer for that. That's something that's not really easily resolved. We one of the presenters at our conference recently talked about manufacturing in Australia and the fact that manufacturing is still very much alive in this country.
Yeah.
But it's being done in a way that's perhaps more sophisticated than we're used to seeing. It's not about mass production and competing with the mass producers. It's about tailored solutions and even bespoke sort of supply, if you like. So
yeah.
I think that whether or not the big five want to do that or not is another question, and clearly they receive a lot of tax incentives elsewhere in the world to do that.
Yeah.
But perhaps there's opportunities just to think about where's technology going, where are electric tractors going, where are alternative fuel sources going, where are component sort of supply trends heading. Are they opportunities for Australian manufacturers?
Yeah.
That's possibly where we're going to see a bit more opportunity rather than just saying, hey, let's try and convince a Massey Ferguson, if you like, to start building tractors again. I think that might be a bit of a long shot, that one.
Yeah. So do you have a message to the current Australian manufacturers of implements and attachments? Because the market that even ourselves, Silvan Australia, operate in is an extremely competitive one. When I think slashers, rotary hose, mulchers, and even three-point linkage small sprayers, horticultural sprayers. Is there a message you have for this? Not just us, there's a number of manufacturers still hanging on to assembling in Australia.
Yeah, look, all I can offer is the fact that Australian farmers want to buy quality.
Mm-hmm.
They want to buy from trusted suppliers and advisors that can solve their problems.
Yep.
And you'd like to think that that's where our local manufacturers have an advantage. And I think we'd encourage people just to continue to work hard at that message and keep reassuring their customers that it's not just about the price. It's the it's the total life cost of the business that matters.
That's correct. Yeah,
and very easy for me to say, I know, but I'm not sure there's any golden ticket beyond that.
No. Look, I mean, in fairness, I mean, we spoke with Leo Skunderbeek on the last podcast, and he said the same thing as well, and stock on hand and the supporting of the parts as well. So that's a message to, I guess, a lot of Australian manufacturers to continue to do that. Yeah. I guess here's another question for you guys. What sort of innovations would the TMA like to see in Australian agricultural machinery in the coming years?
Well, look, there's no shortage of opportunities coming down the line for autonomous tractors and very specific sort of technology application, if you like. But we still continue to hear stories about the lack of connectivity out in all parts of regional Australia, and the fact that you can't always get that sort of connectivity necessary to drive these functions. So that's something that sort of remains a bit of a bugbear. And I think if you want to ask the government, what could we do what message could we send to the government to assist the industry we're in? Well, that'd be one of them, is to get the connectivity coverage where it needs to be.
Sure.
But beyond that, I think we're certainly seeing a movement towards greater connectivity, greater use of autonomous, and I think that's just going to continue unabated.
Yeah. No, fair enough. No, I agree with you there. Here's another one. I mean, the retail and the wholesale machinery marketscape is a quite a wide one in Australia. Probably one of the biggest challenges that not only Silvan Australia but a number of companies and retailers are facing is engaging with potential new generation of millennials. How do we get that generation, the next generation, we'll call them, of people involved in agriculture?
Look, it's a very good question, and one that we spent some considerable time discussing at our conference, and the fact that right across the board, attracting, developing and retaining staff remains the key priority for the industry. One of the things that many people seem to be doing with some success is really investing time and energy at the school level, getting engaged at particularly regional schools, I guess, making sure that they're aware of the virtues of a career in ag, making sure the parents of the kids are being engaged in that topic as well. And it's quite interesting to think that most of the news about ag at the moment is a bit negative, that the drought's really having an impact, and must question people's consideration for whether they want a career in ag or not. But agriculture still remains one of the highest returning, less volatile industries in the country, believe it or not. So there's a lot of good stuff still happening out there, and we've got to get that message out to make young people aware that it is a great place to work. And so I think it's at two levels. It's at that higher level to make sure that message is getting put through, but also at the local level, it's just going to mean rolling the sleeves up and getting in at the local level, getting to know the local schools, getting to know their parents,
Yeah.
And that's going to take 5 or 6 years before you see any returns on that. But
yeah.
I'm not sure there's any short circuit again for that one.
No, I think you're right, Gary, and I think it is a challenge that all companies involved in agriculture are facing at the moment, is the engagement. And I do agree with you wholeheartedly. I think the press, I'll call them the mainstream press, so we call them I won't mention their names, but I think people can work out who they are. But the mainstream media in Australia has I guess, drought-affected stories seem to sell papers or is deemed as clickbait, but I think there's not enough positive stories. And I guess that's one of the reasons why we do the podcast as well, is to get not just positive stories, but real stories out there. So, no, agree with you wholeheartedly.
And I think you've even seen yesterday, the government has followed down that path with more drought assistance, and there's a big debate going on between Labor and Liberal about how that should be applied. Now, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that there aren't people out there suffering that don't require drought assistance, but any efforts to try and promote a positive message to the industry just got pushed back another 10 pages in the paper, didn't they? So
yeah, that's right.
That just makes it tough.
Certainly does. Hey, Gary, look, thanks for your time on the podcast. We'll bring it to a close there. But before we finish up, if people want to get involved with the TMA or become members, is there a website or a Facebook page they can go to, or how do they get in touch with you guys?
Yes, both of those means, to be honest. So our website is the best place to make contact. Mm-hmm. We do have Facebook and LinkedIn presence as well. We'd certainly be happy to hear from anybody out there that has an interest in what we do.
Yep.
And I just congratulate you on this initiative. I think it's a great effort, and hopefully it's proven to be successful out there.
Oh, thanks, Gary. We really appreciate that, and we really appreciate your time on coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.
All right, thanks for that, Gary, and take care, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you.